I hope that this time of year you are able to connect to love, whether that be love for yourself, which I know can be a little bit more difficult, or love for someone else, love that you can share with another person. Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new, I'm Amanda. Welcome to the channel where we are all about shattering the mental health stigma. I would love it if you would make sweet love to that subscribe button and give the bell a few kisses so you're not missing any of this content that's designed to help you with your mental health or help you help others. I really wanted to talk about relationships because that's the vibe that we get around the Valentine's Day season, right? We're all talking about love and relationships. And I feel, unfortunately, because there's such a pressure to be in a relationship, that we've gotten to that point as a society where being single is something to be pitied and it's something to avoid like the plague. And unfortunately, because of that, we tend to be willing to put up with less than we deserve. And we get into relationships that don't serve us just because we don't want to be alone. I know it, I've been there, and I've been in some toxic relationships that I would not wish on my worst enemies. However, now I have found myself in a very healthy, thriving relationship, and I'm really grateful for that. And I was just sitting thinking, what's the difference? What feels different? What things are different? What signs are there that this is a healthy relationship? And I journaled about it, and I just wanted to share those things with you guys so that you can either know maybe what you should be looking for, what you should be cultivating in your own behavior, or what you should be getting in your current relationship. So these are the things that I've noticed that just really reaffirm to me that I am in a healthy relationship. So number one is he keeps my anxiety in check. His presence is a source of comfort and not fear. So I remember that there was a time when I would think, oh my gosh, when my heart's racing and my palms are sweating, that must mean I'm really in love, right? No, that is a sign of anxiety, and you don't want to feel that with the person you were in a relationship with. I remember in past relationships, I would literally feel anxiety just being around the person. I could hear the front door open and all of a sudden my heart rate is climbing and I'm feeling shaky and I'm feeling nervous. You shouldn't feel anxious around a partner when you're in a healthy relationship. I feel confident that I can express things that bother me and be heard and validated. This is huge to me because I know in the past there were so many times where I would try to set a boundary or I'd try to say that something was bothering me, and it would turn into this end of days fight. And I didn't want it to turn into a fight, and I don't even think they wanted it to turn into a fight, but it was often the case that the blame would be shifted onto me, and then it would just be my perception, or it'd be my fault, or it'd be my opinions were just skewed. Whatever the case was, I was always in some way, shape, or form being shamed for the things that I wanted or the things that I felt, and my opinions just didn't seem like they mattered. It seemed like if I said, hey, I'm feeling this way and it really hurts me, then the other person would just say, well, you're being sensitive, or you shouldn't feel that way, or why do you feel that way? So there was never a point where I could just talk about what I wanted and what made me feel happy and secure and good. And now I didn't realize how bad it was until I'm in this healthy situation and I will go to express something such as, you know what, when you did that earlier, when you said that, it really hurt my feelings, and there's no fight. I feel myself bracing, like tensing up, physically tensing up, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for this fight. And then it doesn't happen. I go, oh, wait, what? Now I don't know what to do with all these feelings. I don't know what to do with all this anger. But just knowing that you can communicate with the person. An apology is genuine and will be followed up by immense effort not to make the same mistake. So an apology, a genuine, true, real apology, isn't just words. It's, I know I did this and I feel really bad about it, and I'm going to try to make it right. I'm going to try not to do the same thing again. There should be effort to make it right. I don't believe in forcing even children to apologize, because I think that it should be deeper and there should be a lesson learned there about, well, how did this make the other person feel? Would I want to feel like that? How did it make me feel? And I think there's so much to be learned about genuine remorse that we brush over. in our society and forcing people to say they're sorry or trying to guilt people into it. No, let people understand what it is, how it's affecting the other person and how it can affect them. But you can't say you're sorry if you're just going to keep doing the same thing. And I saw that a lot in my past relationships where sure, there'd be an apology, there would even be loving gestures sometimes grandiose gestures, but then the behavior repeated, and that's not healthy. I can listen to mushy songs and watch mushy movies and feel like I'm the main character as opposed to a bitter, depressed, and jealous outsider. Look, I didn't watch my favorite movies for years on end. I hadn't listened to a lot of the songs I really enjoyed because I would start feeling jealous, and it would start really kicking up those feelings of, why don't I deserve that? Why am I not good enough? Why can't I feel like that? And the answer to that was because I wasn't in a relationship that served that kind of atmosphere or that kind of feeling. So I was constantly looking at these characters or listening to these songs, and I just felt so desperate to want to feel that instead of feeling like I was. Instead of listening to this love song and going, oh, I can find things that I relate to in this, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I wish more than anything that this was me. So just something as simple as, how do you feel when you're watching others get showered with the things that you know deep inside you deserve and that you desire? How are you feeling when you're seeing that depicted somewhere else or hearing that depicted somewhere else? My individual life is thriving. I can engage in my interests and hobbies. I can have my projects and friends and feel just as excited about all of them as the time I spend with my boyfriend. At the same time, we spend frequent quality and consistent time together. I feel like a priority, not a burden. You know, I also feel very driven to be a better version of myself. So my relationship drives me to want to do more in my projects. It drives me to want to be better. It drives me to grow in a lot of ways. And in my previous relationships, it was so common for me to feel like I was just something to be scheduled. Like I was just this thing that had to be done, that they didn't really enjoy being around me, and they probably didn't. And in a lot of cases, I didn't enjoy being around them because the situation had become so toxic. But then because we're not spending time around each other, or if we are, we're probably spending it fighting, or even if we're not and we're spending quality time together, it still feels uncomfortable. That eventually is going to weigh on my self-esteem, thinking, well, why don't they want to be with me? Why don't they want to spend time with me? Why aren't I good enough? And then that starts playing into that self-worth again. But just knowing that I have my life and he has his life, and then we have our life. I don't need someone else to complete me. We are two complete people that complement each other. I think that relying on someone else to complete you is a really, really toxic mind state to be in. And I was the most codependent person on the face of the planet, all right? There was a point where I literally could not go more than an hour without talking to someone in some way, either being on the phone or being around someone. I had to constantly be in communication with someone because it was after my mom passed away and I didn't know who I was. If I wasn't their daughter, if I wasn't my parents' daughter, I had no identity. So I had to have other people constantly telling me who I was and how I should feel and how I should think. And I constantly had to be getting validation from a partner. And now I don't have that. I have my life and it's beautiful, and we have our life and it's beautiful, and it's a really good place to be in, because you can't have a healthy relationship out of codependency. It's absolutely impossible to have a healthy relationship if you want to be around that person 24/7, because number one, all the things that they loved the most about you, you're going to suffocate because you're going to lose your identity in that relationship. And then there's going to be bitterness and resentment. There has to be a balance between your personal life and your relationship life, even if the two get intertwined at times. I finally evolved from a drive for romance to a drive for love. There is such a big difference. Romance is superficial. It's like the soap opera, long speeches, that scene of 1,000 candles and the flowers and the bowl of fruit, the professions of love that 2 episodes later is going to end up with that person sleeping with their partner's brother or whatever the case is. And love is doing yoga with your partner so that they don't lose their streak. Love is doing the dishes for your partner because you know how much they hate them. Love is just a nice note or a simple gesture. That's what love is. Love is action that's really coming from the heart. It doesn't have to be some grandiose gesture, although I am a hopeless romantic and I love those things and they mean a lot to me, but I'm now looking more for love than I am romance. I needed romance to validate me. I needed people to do these things to constantly validate me. And now I'm more seeking the day-to-day, the overall ambience, things like that. And I think that there's a huge difference between looking for romance and looking for love. The relationship helps me process old trauma and doesn't create new trauma. So my previous relationships, I felt like I would try and take one step forward to be pushed 10 steps back, that I would try and work on these things that were bothering me, on this trauma, only to have a bazillion new traumas come up and I was drowning, constantly drowning. And it was easy to go, why are you traumatized by these things? Or why do these things bother you? Or why aren't you getting over them? And the truth is because there were too many of them, because the behavior in the relationship was just rehashing that trauma over and over and over. And it might not have been their fault, it might not have been my fault, it doesn't really matter whose fault it was. It was the fact that I kept just re-experiencing trauma so badly that I never had the opportunity to process any of the old stuff. And now, not only is my partner cognizant of my traumas, of my struggles, of my triggers, of things like that, and is really, really loving and compassionate and empathetic and sympathetic, there's a difference, to those things, but they help me move through them. They encourage me, he encourages me to move through them. And he really just understands that can be a process. It's not going to be an overnight thing. And there's certain things that I might never get over, and that's okay. And I don't feel pressured to. I feel driven to, but I don't feel pressured to. And there's a big difference. But I do feel a lot of encouragement of, hey, have you thought about doing this to confront this specific trauma? Because he knows I do exposure therapy and he can give suggestions or ideas, and is very, very supportive of, you know what, I'm willing to go through this with you. And that means a lot, knowing that I have someone to get through that trauma with. I learn new things and new perspectives and feel I can teach and help him grow as well. And we can debate without feeling attacked. And it's awesome because so much in previous relationships, every single time I tried to bring up something I believed in or something I was passionate about or just something that I had kind of a passing opinion about, it would always turn into a debate, and not a debate as in a healthy debate where we should be having conversations about here's the differences of our opinions, but well, you're wrong and you shouldn't feel that way and you shouldn't think that way and you're stupid. That's kind of the vibe I got a lot, was there was always that tendency to try and prove wrong instead of try and learn and try to understand another person's perspective. And that's what we should all be doing, relationships or not, is trying to see from the other person's perspective, even if we don't agree. So debate, a conversation doesn't have to be about converting a person to your way of thinking or getting them to agree with you or getting them to see that they're wrong. It should be about learning and what we can learn from the people that we disagree with. And sometimes the only thing we can learn is, man, that is a great example of what I don't want to be, or this certain trait is a great example of what I don't want to portray. So there's always some kind of lesson to be learned. But if we're constantly just putting ourselves in an echo chamber and wanting people to parrot back our beliefs and our thoughts and our emotions, we're never going to grow. My shadow isn't always in the forefront because I don't feel threatened. So our shadow, or whatever you want to call it, dark passenger, whatever the case is, it's a defense mechanism. And when we're feeling like we're constantly on the defense, it's going to kick that up more. So for me, that came out as splitting, which is a borderline trait. It's the trait of individuals struggling with borderline personality disorder. And that's something that I'm probably gonna make a video on, just to explain how that works, because it's not what it sounds like, but I think that it's something that a lot of people could use some understanding on. So I want to make a video on that, but I would have a lot of splitting. I would have a lot of dysregulation, a lot of emotional meltdowns because I constantly felt threatened and my shadow was just trying to defend me in the only way that she knew how. And now when I feel my shadow kicking up, I can say, you know what? I got it this time. Let's try it my way. Let's do this in a better, healthier way. And I appreciate you trying to protect me. I appreciate you trying to help me. And she sees from experience now that there's a good chance I will be able to work it out on my own, so I can diffuse her a lot easier. There are no fights, only disagreements. There's no tone, there's no aggression, there's no irritation, there's just disagreements and saying, hey, I didn't like that, I didn't like the way that made me feel, I don't like when you do this, or whatever the case is, or just conversations. There's disagreements of, you know what, I really think the pillow should be like this. Well, I think the pillow should be like this. And we kind of weigh the pros and cons, and somebody's gonna end up with the pillows their way and somebody's not. But it doesn't turn into a fight of, well, you just disrespect me and you have to have everything your way. And blah. I know y'all have been there. Everybody's been there at some point where mountains turn in, or molehills turn into mountains. And it's exhausting. Oh my God, it's so exhausting to live like that, where you literally can't have a conversation about what you're gonna have for dinner without it just turning into this enormous fight. And I dysregulated so bad that simple things would turn into these enormous fights that would end in mudslinging and ad hominem attacks and all these other logical fallacies, because I refused and they refused to really just see the bigger picture and have positive communication. So I think I'm a pretty good communicator, but if I'm with somebody who isn't willing to learn to communicate in a positive way in return, I can get really it can get really bad. It can get really bad. And I think that's the case with anyone. If you're pushed far enough, it can get really bad. So I think that there's going to be some really good stories to be shared here, because like I said, relationships really affect our mental health. If they're toxic, they can really drag us down. And if they're healthy, they can really build us up. And I think we've all been in good and bad relationships. Well, I can finally say I've been in a good one, yay! In good and bad relationships. And if you haven't, then you deserve to be. You deserve to be in a good relationship, in a happy, healthy, thriving, fulfilling relationship. But like I said, I think we're gonna get some good stories, and that's what we're about, is good, bad, and crazy. Sharing your mental health stories here in the comments. So in your past relationships, what was it that built you up? What was it that tore you down? Even in your current relationship. Let's talk about that and how that affected your mental health, or even your partner's mental health. I really encourage you to share this video, because I guarantee you there's people in your life that need to see it. Give it a thumbs up. And like I said, share your story here in the comments, because that's how we shatter the mental health stigma, is by talking about our mental health and normalizing it. I love you guys so much. Mwah!